Hello, teachers. We are in session 5 of the Explore the Bible Summer in Psalms. And my name's Damon, and I'm here with Pastor Ben Jennings.
What's up? How are you guys doing?
And we are going to go through our lesson. We're going to go through our lesson in Psalm 132. And what we're going to be looking at today is that every believer can live according to God's promise in these 3 ways exemplified by David. And so the first way we're going to be looking at is to be intentional in worship. And that's going to be in verses 1 through 10. All right, so be intentional in worship. And verse 1 says, Lord, remember David and all his afflictions, how he sware unto the Lord and vowed unto the mighty God of Jacob. Surely I will not come into the tabernacle of my house, nor go up into my bed. I will not give sleep unto my eyes, or slumber unto my eyelids, until I find out the place for the Lord, and habitation for the mighty God of Jacob. Lo, we heard it in Ephratah. We found it in the fields of the woods. We will go into his house, or into his tabernacle, rather. We will worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, into thy rest, thou and the ark of thy strength. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness, and let thy saints shout for joy. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away thy face of thine anointed. And so that's the first scriptures that we're looking at, and the point that we're looking at is be intentional in worship. And so, Pastor Ben, why did we go with be intentional in worship?
Well, I think that's a good kind of segue into this. There's he says in verses 1 through 10, this is essentially David telling God what he's going to do for God in response to his promise. God promised him in this Davidic covenant that there would be a ruler on his throne forever, and he puts the condition if he will obey me, right? If your kids will obey me, if your offspring obey me, then you'll do that. We're going to see that in the next point, and obviously that ends up being Jesus, which that's the whole psalm. But here he's saying, I want to build a tabernacle for you. I want to build a temple for you. He says, I want to be intentional in my worship of you. You see words in verse 2 like swear and vowed. He says in verses 3, I'm not going to bed or give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find out a place for the Lord, a habitation for the mighty of my God. So he goes through all of this and basically says, we're going to worship. I'm going to worship you. I'm going to do everything I can to worship you. And he's basically saying, and I want you to favor me. I mean, that's what, keep your promises to me. Verse 9, let thy praise be clothed with righteousness. Let thy saints shout for joy. For thy servant David's sake, turn not away the face of thine anointed. So you have in this, like, his desire to have a place for worship of God. He's being intentional. He's saying, I think it is somewhat like, hyperbolic language. I'm not going to sleep. I'm not going to even close my eyelids until this is done, until this is settled. And I don't think that's possible, right? But like that, he's using this poetic language to seek God and to worship God and to say that he's committed to God and he wants God to continue to be committed to him. So I think there's a response here of worship to the promises of God and having God be his God, essentially. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. David was going to worship God because God had made these promises to him. And we see in the next point, in the next way, that he's living according to God's promises. He's doing that by being encouraged by his faithfulness. So the first thing he does was he was intentional in worship, and now he's being encouraged by God's faithfulness, right?
Right.
And so that's way number 2.
I can read verse 11 to down through verses 14, right? The Lord has sworn in truth unto David, he will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony that that I shall teach them. Their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. For the Lord hath chosen Zion, he hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. Did I go too far?
Nope. That's it.
So here you have, in the first 10 verses, you have God, David promising kind of back to God in response to his promise. Mm-hmm. And this one you have God promising to David what he's going to do. And I think it's interesting. He said there's going to be a heir on your throne forever, right? So that's a pretty amazing thing. So I think, don't you think, Damon, I think this is true, like when God makes a promise, he keeps his promises.
Amen. Yeah.
And that's really the point, right? The point is be encouraged by that. So now I got a question for you. I'm putting you on the spot. We're recording. So now you're the one that edits, so it works out.
Yeah,
but,
I'll just edit it out.
Yeah. You have here like a condition, right? If thy children will keep my covenant and my testimony, then that I shall teach them. And right now, there's not a literal throne in Jerusalem with a literal king sitting on that throne, right? Mm-hmm. But one day there will be. That's what we're going to talk about in the next point. So you have this like condition that David's line is interrupted at some level, but then obviously Jesus is going to sit on the throne forever. Mm-hmm. So you kind of see in this passage kind of a both being the case, don't you?
Yeah, like obviously who's ruling in Israel from,
a human perspective.
From a human perspective from thousands of years ago, or maybe 1,000 years ago, has not necessarily been David's seed.
Right.
But we're going to see David's seed again coming and ruling, and that's why we can be encouraged, because we know that what God said is going to happen.
Right.
Is going to happen regardless of what we are experiencing happen at this very moment. That could not be the best thing for us in our perspective. Like, oh, God's promise failed. No, it didn't fail. He's going to be faithful to what he said.
Right.
And we're going to see it come.
And that's why in the moment we're going to have to be encouraged, because there may be times where it doesn't seem like God's coming through. Mm-hmm. I think in 1 Peter we studied that a little bit. Like God is not slack according to his promise, as some men count slackness, but is long suffering, not only that any should perish, but all come to repentance. So sometimes it may appear like, oh man, I don't know if God's going to come through. And it's in those moments that we need to be encouraged, not to stop doing number one, being intentional in worship, because God has made a promise and we can know that he's going to keep his promise, which then leads us logically in this instance to number 3. What's step number 3?
Way number 3. Way number 3 is look forward to his coming. And so that's in verse 17 and 18. It says, there I will make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself shall his crown flourish.
Yeah, I think that horn of David is talking about Jesus Christ, and he is going to end up winning. His enemies will be clothed in shame, and he will have a flourishing crown. He will sit on David's throne forever, which is referenced in the psalm, and I think this is looking forward to a millennial reign of Jesus. Mm-hmm. There's a sense in which Jesus is king. He's sitting on the right hand of God, but he's not literally king on the throne of David in Jerusalem like he's going to be one day. Mm-hmm. And so this is kind of looking forward to that. And I think Damon, really the application, as the teachers think about it, the application is that, if God makes a promise, you can act on that promise, even though the promise may not yet be fulfilled. What do we call that? We call that faith. Yeah. Faith. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And so I think that like the believers in my class, I teach the median age class, the people in my class who got kids in school, who got bills to pay, who've got struggles and trials that they're going through, there are some promises of God that God has made to them. Not every promise in the Bible is for every person, but there are promises that are to us. And he said things like, I'll never leave thee nor forsake thee. And he is promising to come back. And it's on those promises that we can live. Like we can actually make decisions about how we live based on the fact that being encouraged that God made a promise, and that if we live according to that promise, that's what's best for us, right? Like, so that's where, and specifically with this promise is, lift up your head, redemption draws nigh. Like Jesus is going to come back, and he's going to make everything that's wrong right. And so we can live according to that promise. We are looking literally for his imminent return. So I think that's a great way to apply that. You teach the young adults class. Is there any specific application to them?
Yeah, I mean, people are going through all kinds of different life situations. You know, we have people who are dealing with marital problems. We have people who are dealing with problems with their kids. We have people who are single and they're dealing with issues, work issues and all kinds of stuff like that, where it's tough, where waking up and going about life and living. Well, I think what you were saying is like, these are really just 3 ways you could live by faith. Right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
According to God's promises, you can live by faith in these 3 ways essentially. And waking up in the morning and going about your day sometimes it's not easy to live by faith. And so,
or even like the idea that like God told me to do something, he gave me a command. And so faith means, well, I got to believe that if I do what he says, that even though in the short term that may look like I don't prosper because of that, or like I'm restricted in some way because of that, you know, that in the end, it's going to be what's best for me because you're trusting him. So like, I mean, that works for everybody, but like, okay, like it seems like everybody's going and partying and that's where they're meeting and they're finding love and that, but I'm single and I'm lonely on Friday night, but I don't want to go do that. So what do you're trusting God's promise that if you obey, he's going to bring you the right person. You be proactive about what but it's that kind of a thing. Like we trust in God's promises.
Yeah.
So I think that's good. There is, some like, there are some things in the text that we want to be careful not to say something beyond what the text says. And so we want to be careful about that. But I think in a general sense, this applies to everybody. And I hope this video helps out some teachers who, I'll talk to you. I hope this video helps out you who are studying this passage. This week's lesson and the next week's lesson, which we're about to review in here in just a second, are both dealing with some of these ideas of this Messiah that's coming. And so not just the first time, but the second time. So teachers, I hope this helped. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Thanks.